Usually, we here keep you updated with the latest vehicles, for example also with the all-new Mercedes S-Class. But today, we're going to take a trip to the past. This car here is the first vehicle that was officially called Mercedes S-Class. There were some high luxury vehicles before by Mercedes that have, even more heritage. But this one here, introduced in 1972, the first official Mercedes S-Class. The very vehicle here today, 1979, and we'll experience it together. In exterior, interior, and the unique driving experience, for sure, in Thomas Blue color, so I'm more tempted to keep it. Everything of that, in Full HD, full screen, and full length. Let's go. Almost 500,000 pieces of this generation being sold between 1972 and 1980. Then in 1978, for the very first time, there was an all-new innovation at that time, the anti-lock braking system was introduced, the ABS. And since this one here is from 1979, it already had this great new safety feature, which has probably saved thousands of lives. Here, just visually, very interesting. You can see this car here started this actually even contemporary look with the front grille in a more horizontal way and the tail lamps that lead over from the front grille, so 2 times this horizontal pair. And before that it was a little bit different, but after that basically all Mercedes models had that same base styling. So this was really also groundbreaking for the Mercedes design at that point. You also know that the W123, it's like a predecessor of the E-Class, also had a similar design then later on. The code for this vehicle here is W116, by the way, for this first S-Class. And of course, with the standing upright star. And you see, at that stage, you really had useful bumpers still, where not everything gets scratched, and messed up all over the place just when you have a small parking bump. So, yeah, maybe we will see something of that return at some stage. I don't know. But definitely, what a beautiful, unique piece. The length is 4.96 meters or 195 inches. This is, about 15 centimeters or 6 inches shorter than a current Mercedes S-Class. So already has, quite substantial length, definitely. But, at that point, the cars were just really tinier if you compare it to nowadays cars. They were especially, they weren't that wide in the front. But the length already, again, quite substantial. What a beautiful color, right? So this would be exactly the one I would pick. And about the bumper, here also, these rubber bumpers here at the side. So it was really not a big problem when you opened the door, maybe like in a parking lot or so, you did not damage the paint. And I think, at some point, maybe something like this comes back. Well, Citroën tried it with the C4 Cactus, but that then was, drawn back a little bit again. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing with modern cars. But here you can see the design line. Everything is kept so simple, and that's often with, iconic vehicles. You see a very straight design line above the door handles here, and then this pretty strong C-pillar, and together with this housing of the windows. And this design scheme here of the window graphic is carried on all over the forthcoming S-Class models. 14-inch wheels, and you see at that time always came in this great color combination that you had the wheel cap here in the very same color as the vehicle, and this is such a unique Mercedes feature. Also again, carried over through other models later on. So, what do you think here? Would you go for this S-Class or for a newer one? Yeah, it's a really tough choice, isn't it? And the net worth here of this very vehicle, because it's in such good shape, around 100,000 euros. So if you would have kept the car, you would surely have gained some money, because when you bought this car, with inflation and so on, of course it was way cheaper than it would be today. But of course inflation is a very, very big factor if you look at past car prices. This car here does, by the way, have a steel suspension. However, for this model with the bigger engine, there was also an air suspension available. But soon also more about the engines. In the rear, also a very rectangular design, and this is what I really love about this generation of vehicles. And very special at that time, these ripped tail lamps. You can see it right here. You can really go, today you will say, oh, you have new 3-dimensional tail lamps and so on, and they're horizontally drawn. Yeah, that was the case already right here. And why is that? Well, it had a function, because when there was some dust and dirt coming over these lamps, you could still see everything. It was never completely covered, because they were ripped in that case. However, then when you want to clean it yourself afterwards, this was of course a little bit more complicated. So after all, this technology was then, again, thrown away, so to speak. But definitely at that point, a very unique technology. 350 SE, this is the exact model name here of this 116 generation. So this is more about the engine. We're going to talk about it when we also can actually see it. And this car, already told you earlier, introduced a lot of safety technology, not only in the ABS later on, but also, for example, here the fuel tank was positioned above the rear axle, so it was also then protected in case of a rear crash. Well, what do we have under the hood? And even at that time, see here, the hood was kept open. Pretty cool. So this is a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V8. Yeah, way to go, naturally aspirated, and 8 cylinders. And indeed, you might remember the naming 350 SE, so that tells you something about the displacement. And I like it when the numbers or the names of the cars really tell you something about the engine still. Yeah, at that point it was the case. About 10 seconds is the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour, and the top speed at that time was just over 200 kilometers. And what other engines were available? So you could also get a V8 with higher displacement figures, 2 different higher displacement figures. Then you can also get a smaller R6 inline 6-cylinder, and also an inline 5-cylinder turbo diesel, which was also quite new at that time. This is the car key, as simple and manual as it gets, and we really have to pay attention that we don't break this off completely out of this plastic piece, because there are no replacements for this very key. So, and then you can see here, just listen to these sounds. A little bit less gentle. Here we go. Once more. What a door closing sound. This is really a classic. Then, inside of the doors, you can see here there's a fabric insert, and then some soft touch materials. Here also has a leatherette look. And it is indeed not from animal origin, but still feels and looks good. Although this car is, of course, not new at all, but has aged very, very well. Then you can also see this steering wheel here also has a soft touch, and was also new with this 4 spokes introduced in this generation. Also, the column here, in case of a crash, it's not all rigid. It also has a safety feature that the steering wheel kind of moves inward a little bit to protect you in case of a crash. Also, again, another introduced safety feature. Then wooden decor elements here. Of course, all nice and round analog gauges. Blue dashboard here as well, and even here in the soft touch. And look at that again, how well this one has aged. Then the special seats, and how beautiful is it that it all corresponds exterior and interior color, and fabric on the inside, and this outside here is also a high-grade leatherette. And this car here is animal-free indeed, and this is really astonishing. We talk about more sustainable animal-free cars today, and we've been discussing the leatherette grades, but here from a 1979 vehicle, a very high leatherette grade. So sometimes we just have to look at past cars and then we see, how it can be done even at that stage. Very interesting, isn't it? Also, it's so beautiful that you see here, this is then also covered in fabric. You could also get this car with Quartz Seats, by the way. This was also very special, but here then with the fabric one. And the seat, very plush, This is a really interesting feeling. Here you can even put it up, but you have to go forward for this. So forward and up, like from some BMWs, for example. And then also manual, of course, slide forward and backward. And you can also adjust here the back part of the seat. So it feels old school sofa living room alike, but definitely really plush and comfortable. Very interesting. The modern seats more follow a little bit the ergonomics of your body. That has been improved. That was not necessarily the case here. Here at that stage, it was rather achieve the comfort by just being plush and soft, for example. With 1m86 or 6'1", I still have some headroom left. And once more, look at that one here. This is like a very soft material. And I talked to the guys here at the Classic Garage, and they said that this one even is leatherette. So very interesting as for that. We can also put on the ignition, by the way, very gently with the key, like this. And then I can also show you that even at this stage, a lot of things were already electric. For example, the windows here, electric windows, and this is also controlled everything here in the middle console. And even the electric roof, like this. Here we go. Yeah, and that gives you a lot of nice summer feeling, even with a small deflector here in the top part. So you already had some electric functions, definitely, but most of the other stuff is, of course, all analog. Interior overview, you can see here the horizontal stress, again with the nice wooden deco element. Yeah, nowadays you would pay attention more like to the gaps and so on, but I think we can excuse that for a vehicle from 1979. Here you can see the classic analog gauges with the speedometer, and I grew up in a W123, so the smaller car that came later after this one. And I really remember, like when my dad drove about 200 kilometers an hour on the motorway for the very first time. Yeah, very irresponsible when you talk about it nowadays, but at that time it was like, Dad, go faster, go faster, go faster. Yeah, just all these memories. Then on the right side, you see an analog clock there. On the left side, you can see temperature, and pressure of the oil and so on. Some, electronic gauges in the lower part. For example, for the battery and so on. Then again, this huge steering wheel. Why did you have these huge steering wheels? Because you didn't have so much support in the steering, and the less support you had in the steering, the larger it had to be, that you can still have all the power to move it around, of course. Then, moving towards the middle console, you can see here a very simple design layout: horizontal, vertical. This was the button here to open the top roof. This is here for the rear heating of the glass of the windshield, the rear one. Then you have the air vents right here, all manual, and here also for colder and warmer, and here also then for the strength. Lower part, just the basic radio, and that's it. And here you could light up your cigarette, for example. Then the automatic gearbox with also low gear for towing or for going downhill, as then maximum for the second gear, for example. Then the automatic window levers right here, and this is a very interesting solution here for this middle cubby hole. You have this nice fabric cover where you can just put it out, clean it, and that's it. So yeah, some nice straightforward solutions. And again, that everything is kept in the same color scheme is on the one hand so simple, but also so sophisticated. And in the rear, let's take a look at that. After all, this is an S-Class. Same design, also with the blue fabric on the inside and the bench that just goes all the way through. And let's also take a seat, see about the legroom and stuff. And of course, more than enough space. Also interesting that we have the plush fabric here at the back part of the seat, and this is really cozy here as well. Headroom fits as well. And yeah, you see how deep I sink inside the seat. So this is also different today. You have, more support from the nowadays seats, definitely. But especially here for, a little bit of snuggling, for example, very suitable. So, wow, you really sink deep in there. You even here have, the classic structure here of this armrest that can be put down if you split it, but there could also be, another person here in the middle part. And a lot of you guys maybe still remember that the middle seat was, used to be just with the very simple seat belt here. But yeah, definitely a very nice panoramic view also when you sit here and just look to this vintage interior just from the rear. Taking a look at the front, you can really spend ages in this car. What about the trunk? They were definitely very different from the ones today. You can see here it goes all the way deep here inside the wheel arches, so plenty of space indeed. And just putting some sample luggage inside, and you see how how lost it looks like inside the trunk. This is very interesting. I mean, the length here, this is not like so much different here. The length about 90 centimeters, but what's really crucial is you can put this one here inside then, and on the inside of the trunk, of course, you have to move it in like this. This is more than 1 meters and 60. And this is now in the normal trunk width of a, nowadays sedan or estate would be 1 meter. So, like this here. And this is like really a very crucial difference. The height, however, this is still, compared to nowadays cars, about 45 centimeters, but definitely very different. And look at that also how the hazard triangle like there is integrated in the back panel. Though usually nowadays you fold them out and so on. This one here, a little bit more straightforward, isn't it? Welcome to Thomas's Vintage Driving Lounge here with the Mercedes W116 116er, we also say in Germany, here as a 350 SE. So yeah, what an experience. And I really have to say, I've been driving cars which have like a new worth of like 400,000, like $500,000 or euros, and still when you drive the vintage cars where they are even more unique, you're still a little bit more nervous. By the way, here we can turn at this traffic light because there's this green arrow, the same like it is always in the US, but just an exception rule in Germany when there's a green arrow that you can turn right at the red traffic light. That's like Mercedes SL. And here I can already say it's once again such a smooth driving experience, and that's what a modern S-Class stands for, but also already what this S-Class was about. We also have the roof opened here. It's quite hot here today, so we have a little bit more fresh air inside, and this car really calms you down. Sometimes when you drive some vintage cars, especially when they're a little bit sportier, but even just a VW Beetle or so, they challenge you a little bit because a lot of things are still manual work. You have to have a lot of power for apply a lot of power on the steering wheel. Maybe it's very loud and so on. But this one here is so smooth, silent, relaxed. This also has support already at the steering wheel, so you don't need to have much power applied. Of course, it's not as as much feeling or progressive as from modern steerings or so, but still very relaxed. Automatic gearbox here, also no problem, really relaxed. And of course always the difference is that you have to be a little bit more harsh on the brakes, but considering again for an older vehicle, the brake support you have here is actually quite okay. So it's not like there's nothing happening, So we have driven some vintage cars where you really have to hammer the brakes super hard that something is happening. But here, indeed, although being from 1979, this here already feels more or less like a modern car, you know what I mean? It's relatively easy to drive, so I could still very well imagine driving this one here, maybe even as a daily nowadays, you know? Yeah, you could say it's maybe like just a pity for that, you know? But just comfort-wise and so on, and also with the practicability from the trunk size and so on, you could easily use it as a daily, definitely, no matter what. You don't have like a harsh acceleration, although it's a V8 engine, but I mean, I'm also really gentle with throttle, but you can also push it if you like, and then yeah, stuff is happening. Why not? Also, I've seen it in the engine bay, it's quite well insulated, so we don't hear too much from that engine, although it's a V8. But that was also never meant to be like the primary purpose of the S-Class, rather want to be elegant and subtle. And you sit relatively high in comparison to the hood nowadays, so you have very good view to the Mercedes star, and you really feel like every ride here is a cruise, you know, especially in this very elegant color. And a lot of people are just staring at your precious car here and saying like, wow, this really has class, you know, such a timeless design on the exterior, and you also feel that. By the way, if you go like some left and right here, the funny thing is, the first thing that is happening is not necessarily that you would feel that the suspension is shaking up. It's more that the seat is shaking up, you know, because the seat is like so like plush and loose, also from the springs and so on, that you are leaned inside, right and left on the seat. This is also very, very interesting finding. Oh, we can almost align the top Mercedes star with the rear Mercedes star there of the E-Class convertible in front of us. It's a funny game, right? Yeah, it's a very nice, natural acceleration. Again, here I like the power-off curves of the naturally aspirated engines because there's no turbo that suddenly kicks in. This is really, again, very smooth acceleration. About 50 to 80 we can show here. Well, that's it. Okay, a little bit down here, so a little help for that, but still okay. 80 kilometers an hour, still okay here with the roof open, no problem. For some, insulation test or something about that, we can also close it. And now we're driving once again 80 kilometers an hour, and it's decently silent in here. So of course, when you had like really, really high speeds, that's a big difference to nowadays vehicles. But again, for this stage at that point of car building, this was here like probably again one of the most silent cars, and you can easily drive very, very relaxed at that kind of speed. What do you think, Jonas, as a co-driver?
It's the most comfortable car.
He says the most comfortable car. He really likes that stuff, right? He always told me before, he was like, the older cars, they're always more comfortable. Yeah, I mean, the seats are more plush and soft. It depends then also on long-term comfort, yes. Here you don't feel like sitting too much in the seat, more like on the seat. But if you compare nowadays S-Class, this is also somewhat the case as for that. But I think to me one of the most interesting findings here about this vehicle is that it's so extremely easy to drive, and that was surely an argument at that time, but even so today. And if you think about, it's not a short vehicle by any means. It is rather a long vehicle, and you don't feel like you would move a very, very long vehicle. Just having the steel suspension, it's actually no problem here. There are the small wheels on there, which really have like super much damping just via the rubbers. Then the soft suspension, but it's actually not too soft, so it's still okay. So it's a very comfortable riding experience just by that suspension. Pretty cool. I think I want to leave some air inside here, and it's so nice to drive with the open top. Wow, what a joy to ride here today. We also have some nice countryside routes. Nice engine. This most of the parts also have been proven quite reliable with this vehicle. So Of course, some vehicles that came after that were a little bit better as for, not, that they don't rust or something. So that has been improved then a little bit more. But some even say that some of the older vehicles are even more reliable than some newer ones. That is always like a saying, if it's true or not. I think it depends on the individual car and also how you take care of the individual car as for that. So I just want to steer this car just a little bit around here, and so funny. Do you see how I shake on the seat? That's really so cool. The overview, by the way, is most excellent, I really have to say. No, maybe we have to close it again, because then it gets some rattling noises. That's too high. It's really cool that you look all around yourself and you see everything. There's hardly anything blocking your view, and so you also don't need too much assistance systems because you can see everything. The window, the side mirrors are actually, they're actually quite tiny. Can't see too much in there. So we'll turn around here. By the way, setting the turning indicators. It's a very interesting sound. Oh, there's a C convertible Mercedes meeting here in the middle of the road. Turning circle isn't too bad, so can't complain about that at all. Very cool also, when I put in the turning indicator, this has like a quality feeling to it. Like the resistance before you turn it is like a satisfying feeling. And also just listen to that when the turning indicator snatches back. Fantastic, right? So and this, what this is all about. So much emotion here when driving such a vintage vehicle. And I think it has been definitely a hell of a ride. And now to our conclusion for today with the all old Mercedes S-Class. I always wanted to say that. All old, yes. In contrast to the all new. You can also see that at Autogefuehl very soon when we launch this review here, or when you tune into that at a later stage, it's probably already online. So what about this one? Of course, the exterior styling in this rather rectangular style. It introduced this typical front grille plus headlamps, both together horizontal, leading over, which was really carried over until the next generations. And of course about the safety technology that was introduced with this vehicle, the anti-lock braking system, for example. Then also that the steering wheel gives way just a little bit, and also the more protected fuel tank, just to name a few of that. And the most astonishing thing to me is, this very vehicle, over 40 years old, the whole generation, over 50 years old. And although this age, it's already driving, or still driving, like a modern vehicle. And you can't say that about all cars from these generations here. So this is really very astonishing to me. It is so easy to drive, very plush experience, so a very soft and comfortable ride. The biggest difference driving-wise is, of course, the driving dynamics is by no means at the stage of a modern Mercedes S-Class, for example. A modern Mercedes S-Class is, in comparison to that, driving dynamic-wise, like a true sports car. You know what I mean? Other than that, of course, on the interior, more about the infotainment and stuff, the digitalization. This year, still more manual work. But also at this stage, for this age here, a lot of electronics already. Definitely a very unique experience. I really have to say that the Mercedes with these stylings here are my favorite vintage Mercedes. So the ones before, to me, they look a little bit, very old school. The ones after that, a little bit too modern tech. So this is, what I really connect. This is like what Mercedes is to me, This is like the core of the brand, where it really comes from. Of course, it's like an individual standpoint, but at least this one was the first one called S-Class. And by the way, it comes from special or, extraordinary. So in Germany, we would say super or spezial. So that's, Special is probably the thing that stands most for the letter of S. Definitely a very unique and interesting ride here today. Of course, tune into our modern S-Class reviews. You'll have a lot of fun with that. We also have some more vintage car reviews. It's not our real focus, of course, but still we have some to tune into. Something different for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Please join us in the comments. See you next time.